With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown. Our top stories: St. James Parish, Nevis, a hub of development and community focus. Nevis forges ahead with airport expansion and infrastructure upgrades. Leadership emphasizes balanced development. St. Kitts Nevis Prime Minister on CBI program amidst international scrutiny. High Court in Guyana dismisses challenge to electoral system. CARICOM and PAHO launch strategy to revamp Caribbean healthcare. Internationally, Donald Trump to hit India with 25% tariffs. Now, the details. The recent series of community town hall meetings in Nevis has shed light on ongoing future development initiatives within St. James Parish, with ministers addressing improvements to community infrastructure, plans for early childhood education, and the broader scope of government projects. These discussions come as the Nevis Island administration deepens its public engagement and promotes transparency in governance. During a recent town hall, the Minister of Health, the Honourable Janelle Nisbet, provided an update on the condition and planned enhancements for community centres in St. James Parish, explicitly addressing the Butlers Community Centre and the Franklin Brown Community Centre. Nisbet directly addressed concerns about the Butlers Community Centre.
I think in the same breath you would have mentioned that you're being neglected while saying we're fixing it. So those two things contradict each other, but we did identify Butlers Community Centre as one of the priority areas that we wanted to upgrade.
She confirmed that maintenance teams have been diligently working on significant interior and roofing repairs, along with improvements to windows and shower spaces. While acknowledging that some windows, particularly those facing the roadside, might not appear modern, Nisbet emphasized their functionality.
The windows that I believe you're referring to, the ones facing the roadside, the windows, we identified that they are functional and in good order. I know they might not be as beautiful as more modern windows perhaps, but they are functional, effective, and once they're closed, the AC will stay inside. And that's what we encourage the users of the center to do. Utilize what we have. We've identified the areas that need the work, and we are putting in the money into upgrading that.
The Butlers Community Centre, identified as a priority area, is expected to be upgraded and ready for more programs shortly. Regarding the Franklin Brown Community Centre, Nisbet confirmed its oversight by the Department of Community Development and acknowledged its shared use with the preschool.
Regarding the Franklin Brown Community Centre, yes, that is under the domain of the Department of Community Development as well. And I think we have been coexisting in this space fairly well with the preschool, and I can't think of a better development for community than investing in early childhood. So if there is a need to share the space for that integral purpose until further notice, we are happy to continue that relationship.
The Franklin Brown Community Centre also serves as a shelter with a holding capacity of 115. Further echoing the commitment to early childhood education, Minister of Education, the Honourable Troy Liburd, confirmed that discussions are underway for a permanent home for the St. James Preschool. Minister Liburd expressed his full support for the initiative.
Okay, just to respond in terms of a preschool for the St. James area, I am totally with you on it. It's something that has been discussed. It's something that we are looking at. Of course, you know, we would have to secure the land and so on. In terms of the situation with the primary schools in the area, that is something that we are also looking at. I had discussions on it up to last week. I think it was on Friday. So it's something that we are really looking at. I know that you wanted to come. I know that you were part of the discussion bringing the preschool here to this building, and the fact that we brought a preschool here to this building, it showed that we understood that there is a need. And I think the natural next step would be to get an actual permanent home for the St. James Preschool. So that is something that we are really looking at, and hopefully it would happen in the not too distant future. Thank you.
Premier of Nevis, the Honourable Mark Brantley, affirmed the NIA's unwavering commitment to the development of St. James Parish, despite the recent political shift in the area's representation. The Premier highlighted past significant infrastructure projects undertaken in St. James under previous representation, including housing developments, the water taxi facility that has revolutionized travel between St. Kitts and Nevis, Shaws Road, and the police and fire stations. Premier Brantley expressed his bewilderment at the shift in electoral support.
St. James has, since I believe it was 1992, had a representative in government since 1992. 2022, St. James decided not to have a representative in government. St. John's decided to continue to have a representative in government. St. Paul's decided to continue to have a representative in government. St. George decided to continue to have a representative in government. The good people of St. James say, we want to be in opposition. I don't understand it.
He lauded the former representative's performance.
When we look at St. James, we look at housing in Maddens, we look at the water taxi facility that has revolutionized travel between St. Kitts and Nevis. We look at Shaw's Road, we look at the police station and fire station. We see all this development that happened in St. I'm not even talking about the rest of Nevis for now. I'm talking about in St. James. Led by the representative from St. James. And St. James people decide, man, we're getting too much good treatment, we prefer to go in opposition.
Despite his sentiments, Premier Brantley assured residents that the government would not abandon St. James.
What I will say is that the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, who is at my right, continues to bring concerns, continues to bring issues to us, and we have been trying to address those issues and concerns. We have not as a government turned our backs on St. James because we recognize that St. James is a critical part of the island of Nevis and what we're doing on the island of Nevis.
Premier Brantley concluded with an optimistic outlook for St. James.
But I say to the people of St. James, notwithstanding that, we have not, will not, and cannot abandon St. James. And so you will see development continue here. Mr. Jeffers spoke about the airport. We anticipate a lot of employment and a lot of activity. We anticipate trucks, backhoes, excavators happening right here in St. James again as it becomes yet again a hive of activity. So that is what we're seeking to do.
Other developments in St. James include a new residential land development initiatives at Garner's Estate, where 36.16 acres of land were purchased to facilitate the construction of 170 to 180 new homes. Additionally, construction on a photovoltaic desalination plant in Butler's St. James is moving apace, which will enhance the water supply for residents. The Nevis Island administration is actively pursuing significant infrastructure upgrades, including the transformative expansion of the Vance Amory International Airport, alongside broader road and community development projects. Amidst plans, government officials, including the Honorable Alexis Jeffers and Premier the Honorable Mark Brantley, address public concerns and underscore the necessity of a balanced approach to development within the island's budgetary realities. Alexis Jeffers provided a comprehensive update on the project for the expansion of the Vance Amory International Airport, including the thorough public consultation process and the environmental impact assessment.
Well, to date we have had a number of consultations regarding this project. We have come to this center, we have gone to Pond Hill Community Center, and I believe the first one we had in St. Paul's, at the St. Paul's Anglican Church Hall. But the one that was held over at the Pond Hill Community Center was specifically to present the environmental and social impact assessment to the general public. All of the issues pertaining to the development, social issues, environmental issues, those were discussed and packaged and presented to the planning department. The Department of Physical Planning would have already responded to our submission, and they had concerns that we have since answered. And I believe members of the general public would have submitted concerns to the Department of Physical Planning as well. So all that information was already dealt with as we would have gone along with this project. So those are, I believe, the answer that I'm giving is specifically to say that we have already made those presentations to planning, and so I believe they still can be requested and seen there, Minister Brandier. So those documents are with the Department of Physical Planning, yes.
The expansion will extend the runway in both directions to accommodate larger aircraft, aiming for direct flights from major international markets like the eastern seaboard of the United States, Nevis's primary tourism source market. The comprehensive US $37 million project includes a new parking for private jets, an air hangar, upgraded lighting, perimeter fencing, a fuel farm, an enhanced air traffic control tower, a new fire station, and expanded terminal wings. While the airport expansion is an important infrastructural upgrade, the NIA continues to invest in island-wide infrastructure upgrades. Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Brantley, emphasized the challenging reality of balancing development across all communities within budgetary constraints.
In my position as Premier of Nevis, I'm the one who stands sort of in the middle. And I have to, because if we go around Nevis and we go to these town hall meetings, when we hear the responses from the audience, the entire budget of the NIA would be spent in one community. When I listen to my friend over here talk about butlers, that's the whole budget gone and butlers alone, right? The reason I'm saying that is because not to say that these projects are not important or they don't need to be done, but we have to consider that we have the whole of Nevis that we have to take care of. And what we've done in terms of roads especially is that in the communities we've tried to do the main thoroughfare. If you go in Bath, you go in Brownhill, you go down Hanley's Road, you go even here in Shaw's Road, the main road, Butlers, and then we have left the smaller roads, the tributaries. And Minister Brand is right that we are pivoting now to say, let us try to do some of those.
The Premier drew reference to the strides made in housing on Nevis.
But I want our people to appreciate. I mean, when I'm looking at housing, for example, we saw 126 homes. I think that's the number I have. Sorry, 112, forgive me. Built in St. James over the period. St. John's is the largest population in Nevis. St. John's only got 46 homes over the same period. Gingerland only got 25. Town got 31. My colleague was just reminding me that St. James has 3 community centers. St. Paul's doesn't have one. So sometimes when we engage with the public says, oh, I need this in my village, I need this, I need this. And we understand that. But from my vantage point, I have to look at all of Nevis. And to say that development must come to every part of the island. And since we don't have the resources to do everything all at once, sometimes we recognize that some communities will complain and say, well, this hasn't happened for us yet.
Brantley reiterated the investment being made in making sure that all of Nevis benefits from infrastructure upgrades.
But I want to be very clear. I'm sitting down in the heart of St. James. St. James has seen significant development and significant investment in infrastructure by this government. Perhaps more so than any other constituency on the island of Nevis. This constituency has seen. I saw a rather odd comment recently where somebody suggested that St. James had gone backwards. And I say, well, it got to be that backward and forward have changed, because I don't know anybody could look at St. James today and say that St. James has gone anywhere than but forward, because significant investment. When I drive in Butlers, and let us be fair, when you remember what Butlers Road was and you look at Butlers now, it's day and night. Day and night. You drive up Shaw's Road, it's day and night to what was. You remember the old police station in Newcastle? Now you have 4 Seasons over there. Day and night. You all remember that we used to drag our suitcase through some sand and beg Mr. Yarwood them permission to use an old breakdown pier down there? Look at what you have now. Thousands of people sitting down in air-conditioned comfort. All of that has happened in St. James. So I just want to say that yes, development is necessary. Yes, we need to do more. But we also need to remember that the same demands that you're making, St. Paul's is making, St. John's is making, St. George is making, and St. Thomas's is making. So we have to be balanced in terms of our approach. And so I ask for your patience, because those are the realities that we face. Thank you.
This perspective highlights the government's commitment to equitable development across Nevis, acknowledging that while some areas have seen substantial investment, others require patience as resources are allocated to ensure widespread progress. The Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis continues to work on improvements to the Citizenship by Investment program in a continuous effort to appease international partners. Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, highlighted the country's efforts to balance economic needs with global standards.
With respect to the CBI in general, as you know, I said from the beginning that this would be the greatest challenge that I would face. And I said that for two reasons. One, because the bad decision that was made was to get our country to the point to depend on CBI, over 60% of our budget. That, I think, was a strategic error that put our country at great risk. The other matter was because the CBI, of course, does not totally, it has, other players in it, and decisions made afar can affect the CBI program. And if that is affected significantly, it can affect us, of course. And that is why I think, in other words, it had become the lifeline of St. Kitts and Nevis. I would always say it was the worst economic, fiscal decision made, because we were seeking all the time to diversify the economy after we would have learned a hard lesson from sugar. In 2005, when the factory closed and we had to seek to diversify the economy, financial services, expand tourism, and so forth, we had gotten back to the position where we had become dependent in a significant way on one sector. Notwithstanding that, we decided to make changes because we understood what was out there to protect our visa-free access and to protect the program as much as possible. And so we went through different iterations of adjustments to the law, or SRNOs, to make sure that we were adjusting accordingly so that we can accomplish both things, protect the program and make sure that we continue to have good foreign relations through visa-free access to other countries.
Despite its economic benefits, with CBI contributing between 60 to 70% of federal revenue, this heavy reliance has positioned the nation in a precarious economic juncture. The International Monetary Fund has reported a sharp decline in CBI revenue in 2024, falling to 8% of GDP from 22% in 2023, mainly due to reforms meant to strengthen the program. A board of governors to oversee CBI unit operations, forming a technical committee for file reviews, and for the first time in 40 years criminalizing underselling practices, are just some of the ways the program has changed recently to appease international concerns. Prime Minister Drew emphasized that these actions were crucial to prevent the loss of visa-free access to the UK and EU, a threat amplified by past practices. A significant step in strengthening the CBI program is the establishment of a regional regulator. Prime Minister Drew has strongly advocated for this initiative to ensure a unified and consistent approach among Eastern Caribbean nations.
Notwithstanding, of course, their continued discussion, I have engaged in multiple discussions, multiple fora in the Caribbean, in the US, in Europe, and so forth, dealing with the issue of the CBI program and adjusting it accordingly. We have reached the point, and something that I advocated for very strongly, is to have a regional regulator so that those of us in the Eastern Caribbean can be on the same playing field and have a standard that protects us and, of course, would allay any fears that our international partners may have with respect to our CBI program. I can safely say that in short order, we all are going to Parliament to pass a law and implement a regulator for the CBI in the Eastern Caribbean, which will answer a number of the questions that you have put forward. Questions to answer of direct link to the country. There's link, but there might be questions as to whether that can be strengthened. That is going to be answered. And I don't know if you have seen it, but there is a draft of the bill that has been circulated by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, which is now standing as the body to help us to usher in this regulatory body and this regulatory legal framework. It's out there. So it'd be good if you can see it or our news agencies here can see it and give their feedback so that can, of course, trigger down or filter down into the final law that is to be implemented. So we have come a very long way. And I think this is a tremendous positive step in the right direction. At the end of the day, I can never predict what will happen. But what must always be said is that this administration and myself, we did everything we could have done to help to secure the program and, of course, to maintain our relations with with other countries through visa-free access, reciprocal visa-free access. We have done a lot. And so this is the last part, and we really hope that we have done enough. However, we cannot predict all of the decisions that are to be made with respect to what other countries will do. But we continue to be strong diplomatically. We continue to strengthen relations so that we can achieve both. So you're not wrong. You have heard something, and that is where we are at this particular time. So the bill is out, the draft bill for input.
The ECCB has indeed circulated a draft bill for the establishment of a regional regulator for CBI programs known as the Eastern Caribbean Citizenship by Investment Regulatory Authority. This draft legislation, which was available for public comment until July 16, 2025, aimed to enhance transparency, accountability, and integrity of the program by setting common standards, regulating and supervising them, and enforcing compliance. The regional regulatory body is expected to unify and strengthen due diligence procedures and improve international credibility. In regional news, High Court in Guyana dismisses challenge to electoral system, News Source Guyana reports.
Electoral system by attorney Christopher Ram and Vishnu Bandhu. Mr. Ram and Bandhu, who is the leader of the United Republican Party, were challenging certain sections of the Representation of the People's Act. Both Ram and Bandhu had asked the court to set aside certain sections of the act, as well as to declare certain aspects of the country's electoral framework unconstitutional. Mr. Ram in particular argued that Article 160 provides for a candidate as opposed to a list of candidates to contest the elections, and that Parliament never gave effect to that aspect of Article 160, and that makes the electoral framework unconstitutional. Mr. Ram had also petitioned the court to mandate the Elections Commission to allow individuals to contest the elections outside of the list system. Mr. Bandhu, however, argued that Article 160 permits a political party to contest the elections, and Article 147 guarantees him a fundamental right to participate in an election in any manner that he feels, but the provision of the Representation of the People's Act restricts him in a particular way. But the acting Chief Justice disagreed with both contentions and ruled that the applicants failed to show any constitutional breach in the manner in which political parties are required to contest national elections. She explained in her ruling that there was no evidence to support the claim that the electoral system was flawed. Attorney General Anand Lal, who represented the state in the matter, has welcomed the ruling and said it puts to rest a case that should have never reached the court.
They completely misconstrued Article 160. They plucked words out of it to suit their political expedient position in their cases, in the case. And we had to show the court how Article 160 should be interpreted and how the proportional representation electoral system works.
The acting Chief Justice also dismissed the argument that the proportional representation system created unconstitutional barriers for smaller or individual candidates seeking to participate.
We countered that his reading of Article 160 was completely inaccurate. Article 160 makes no provision whatsoever for an independent candidate to run. Article 160, first of all, entrenches in the Constitution and establishes an electoral system called proportional representation. Proportional representation by itself, by its very character, does not allow for independent candidates to run. So that's the first flaw in the argument.
The court has ordered RAM to pay $500,000 in costs to the Ghana Elections Commission, while Bandu was ordered to pay $250,000 to GCOM and $250,000 to Attorney General Anil Nandlal.
CARICOM and PAHO launch a strategy to revamp Caribbean healthcare. DBS St. Lucia has the details.
Speaking at the signing of the PAHO CARICOM Joint Sub-Regional Cooperation Strategy 2025 to 2029 in Guyana, CARICOM Secretary General Dr. Carla Barnett emphasized that the new strategy builds on the region's long-standing commitment to public health. She highlighted past initiatives like the Port of Spain Declaration on Non-Communicable Diseases and the Pan-Caribbean Partnership Against HIV/AIDS as proof that CARICOM has always prioritized health.
When we say health is important and it's a priority, it is those projects, those undertakings that we do as a community with the support of PAHO and with the leadership of CARFA in many instances that are critical in ensuring that we do prioritize our health.
The strategy, which runs from 2025 to 2029, outlines 5 priority areas, which include strengthening primary health care, climate resilience, addressing NCDs and mental health, combating communicable diseases, and mobilizing resources.
This signing marks a milestone in a long-standing partnership rooted in trust, mutual respect, and a shared vision for the health and well-being of the peoples of the Caribbean.
Ghana's Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony said the plan challenges countries to act with urgency and innovation, especially as the region faces the impacts of climate change, migration, and disease.
A transformative blueprint designed not only to strengthen our health system, but truly reimagine the future of health and well-being across the Caribbean. At its heart, this strategy is about equity, resilience, and action. It is also about our collective response to persistent health inequities, mounting climate vulnerabilities, shifting demographics, and the growing burden of non-communicable disease and, of course, communicable diseases in our region.
Dr. Anthony also announced that Guyana would soon launch a new HPV vaccine program made possible through PAHO's strategic fund. Both leaders stressed the need for strong partnerships and investment in human capital, digital tools, and regional cooperation. The joint strategy reflects a shared commitment to creating a healthier, more resilient, and equitable Caribbean for all.
We now bring you these international reports.
And we're going to start with that news that President Trump says the US will impose a 25% tariff on goods imported from India. That starts on the 1st of August. He also said the world's 5th largest economy will face an unspecified penalty for continuing to trade with Russia. Now, the Indian government has responded by saying it will take all steps necessary to secure its national interests. Well, our India business reporter in Delhi is Davina Gupta. And Davina, it's good to have you here. Talk us through the response to this so far, because we know that this has been in the works for a long time. But that means there are significant costs now for both Indian businesses and US businesses.
Absolutely, Ben. And let me start by reading out excerpts from that statement that's come out. It does say that India remains committed for its national interest, but it also says that it's committed towards engaging with the US for a bilateral trade agreement that is mutually beneficial for both the sides. So this means it's not the end of the road. It seems more like a bump with President Trump's comments on his social media handle Truth Social. But it seems that India, from its side, is hoping that they'll be able to convince US negotiators. They've been engaged in multiple rounds of conversations, especially after President Trump announced the Liberation Day tariffs. It's on pause for now for India. But if the US goes ahead now, we're looking at 25% of tariffs on India's exporters. These are people from labor-intensive sectors like textile and leather and gems and jewelry. And also we're looking at additional penalty, which Donald Trump is yet to specify for its dealing with Russia. India remains one of the largest importers in the world for oil, and Russia is India's largest oil supplier. And in the past, India has maintained that it needs this supply because it's at a discounted rate, and it helps India to help its population access to cheap oil and energy. So for now, India says that it's committed to its national interest, but it has kept that door open for further negotiations.
Yes, and Davina, I mean, the big question is whether that will lead anywhere, because, I mean, looking at some of those posts, you touched on it there, you know, President Trump saying tariffs are far too high, among the highest in the world for a friendly nation. And that's when we get into that area, don't we, of geopolitics, that this is sometimes about trade and business and economics, but sometimes it's about the politics of all this and sending a message from the White House to the rest of the world.
Absolutely. And politics cannot be alienated from here, because India is trying to protect its domestic producers. Because let's not forget, India is the world's most populous nation, and most of its population is dependent on agriculture. So it cannot open its agriculture sector to genetically modified foods and dairy products, which the US wants and has been a sticking point in these negotiations. But the other lucrative part of this is that even the US companies like Meta, Apple, and even Tesla, which is now in India, they need access to Indian markets because it has a large consumer base. And this is where they get most of their business also from, because it's a growing consumer base that cannot be ignored. So that's the leverage that India has with the United States. And of course, there's been a lot of talks in the local media once this news came about the relationship between India's Prime Minister and US President Trump, which will be tested in the coming few weeks.
A powerful earthquake off the coast of Russia's Far East on Wednesday triggered tsunami waves of up to 16 feet, sparking evacuation orders in Japan, Hawaii, and across the Pacific. Eyewitness video showed the moment people in the remote Kamchatka Peninsula felt the magnitude 8.8 earthquake hit, sending them fleeing. While footage released by the region's health ministry is said to show surgery being performed as the room shook. The shallow quake damaged buildings and injured several people. Kamchatka's emergency minister shared a video verified by Reuters of him expressing relief that no children were in the kindergarten when a wall crumbled from the quake and that no one was injured. Tsunami waves struck parts of Kamchatka and partially flooded Severokurilsk, a town on an island south of the peninsula, emergency and regional officials said. Across Japan's Pacific coast, devastated by a 2011 earthquake and tsunami, alarms sounded and evacuation orders were issued for tens of thousands of people. The automated voice in this eyewitness video is heard telling people to get above the fourth floor of buildings. Workers also evacuated the Fukushima nuclear plant, where a meltdown following the 2011 tsunami caused a radioactive disaster. At least 3 tsunami waves were recorded in Japan of up to 4.3 feet, according to officials. Authorities said no injuries or damage were reported so far and no irregularities at any nuclear plants. In Hawaii, the U.S. Coast Guard ordered ships out of harbors as the tsunami approached. Coastal residents were warned to get to high ground, or at least the fourth floor of buildings. Waves of up to 5.5 feet impacted the islands. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center later reduced its warning level, saying no major tsunami was expected. Waves of over 1.5 feet were observed as far as California, with smaller ones reaching Canada's British Columbia. Russian scientists said it was the most powerful quake to hit the region since 1952. Kamchatka sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, a geologically active region prone to earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Officials there said aftershocks were ongoing of a fairly high intensity, though they added that stronger tremors were not expected in the near future.
German giants Mercedes and Adidas flagged hundreds of millions of dollars in US tariff costs on Wednesday. The automaker trimmed its annual sales forecast and profit margin, while the sportswear brand, which missed Q2 sales expectations, held back from increasing annual guidance. That's amid continued uncertainty around US President Donald Trump's levies on European exports. Mercedes reported a nearly $420 million impact in the second quarter from these tariffs, which Trump is preparing to hike for EU-made cars. It now expects an annual profit margin of up to 6% for its car business, down from its forecast of up to 8% at the start of the year. It also sees annual group revenue coming in, quote, significantly below 2024 levels. For Adidas, tariffs will add $231 million to its costs in the second half. It said it held back on annual guidance not only to wait for Trump's final tariff policy, but also to see if levies cause major inflation and impact consumer demand. Despite a stronger than expected Q2 profit, Its sales came in lower than analysts' forecasts, sparking fears it's losing momentum after a previous rush to buy its trending Samba and Gazelle shoes. Adidas shares were down more than 7% in afternoon trade.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were St. James Parish, Nevis, a hub of development and community focus. Nevis forges ahead with airport expansion and infrastructure upgrades. Leadership emphasizes balanced development. St. Kitts Nevis Prime Minister on CBI program amidst international scrutiny. High Court in Guyana dismisses challenge to electoral system. CARICOM and PAHO launch strategy to revamp Caribbean healthcare. Internationally, Donald Trump to hit India with 25% tariffs. Thank you for listening.